Hey guys, tonight we are not strolling through medieval castles or sipping cocoa by the fire. Instead, you're trudging eastward, wrapped in thin wool and wishful thinking, heading toward Moscow with the German army in the winter of 1941. Your boots creak over frost so hard it sounds like cracking porcelain, and the air feels sharp enough to carve your lungs. The campaign was supposed to be quick, a bold blitzkrieg, a victory march to the Kremlin. Instead, you've walked into the jaws of Russian winter. And here's a cheeky warning, you probably won't survive this, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment with your local time and location. Imagine the strange little community will build people in warm apartments, wrapped in blankets, listening while you, in this story, march yourself to frostbitten misery. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The snow stings your cheeks immediately. It doesn't just fall, it needles. Your scarf is thin, the wool scratchy and damp from your own breath, freezing into a little sheet of ice. You tilt your head down to shield your nose, but the wind seems to find any opening. Every step makes a crunch that feels like biting into a stale cracker. You'd laugh if your jaw weren't clenched to keep your teeth from rattling. This isn't the Germany of autumn fields anymore. The land stretches flat, blank, and merciless. No landmarks, just rows of skeletal birches fading into mist. A sense of being nowhere and moving toward nothing settles in. Someone behind you coughs, the sound brittle, like glass snapping. You remind yourself that Hitler promised Moscow would fall before Christmas. Easy to say back in Berlin, when the trains were loaded and the maps looked neat. No one planned for this kind of cold. Historians still argue whether German intelligence simply underestimated Russian winters, or whether hubris blinded the entire command. What's certain is that the army never packed enough coats, and you, unlucky you, are wearing the same summer uniform you marched through Poland with. Your breath hovers like smoke, then freezes in your eyelashes. You blink, trying to melt it with the tiny warmth of your eyes. Someone jokes that you all look like old men with snowy beards. The joke falls flat. No one has the energy to laugh yet. That will come later, strangely enough, when laughing will mean you're closer to dying than living. But you don't know that yet. Your feet already ache, not from walking, but from the cold creeping into leather and skin. The boots the army gave you were meant for marching on cobblestones, not for fighting Siberian air. You wiggle your toes, nothing. It feels as if your own body is slowly vanishing from the outside in. Someone mutters about frostbite, taking ears, noses, and fingers. You picture yourself as a ragged statue, missing chunks, and you wonder if you'd even notice when the first bit falls away. The columns stretch on, gray coats blending into gray mist, a line of ghosts already, and yet, at this stage, discipline still holds. The officer up front keeps barking about pace. You swing your rifle forward, shoulders strapped stiff with frost, and imagine the metal barrel is laughing at you. It's warmer to lean against than to hold. Your gloves, if you can call them that, are just thin wool that soak through instantly. Touching the steel is like licking an icicle with your bare tongue. You pass a farmhouse half collapsed under snow. Smoke curls faintly from its chimney, a promise of warmth you'll never be allowed to touch. Locals still live inside, maybe clutching icons and muttering prayers. You wonder if they're laughing at you now the mighty German army, brought to its knees by weather instead of bullets. Later, Soviet propaganda would feast on this image. German soldiers bundled like scarecrows, teeth chattering, boots cracking apart. Your mind drifts to food. Always food. Back home, maybe your mother's stew, thick with potatoes and sausage. Here, you gnaw at bread, frozen so solid it could double as a brick. You're told not to bite too hard, or you'll crack your teeth. Someone actually did last week. Front tooth split in half like a brittle twig. You chew slowly, hoping the saliva softens it before your molars surrender. A quirky fact slips into your mind. Napoleon's men had suffered the same thing more than a century earlier, marching on Moscow with inadequate supplies, freezing by the tens of thousands. They called it General Winter, and here you are, drafted into his army's sequel. Historians argue whether German generals really believed they could succeed where Napoleon failed, or whether they thought modern technology, trucks, tanks, radios would outpace nature. The irony is that nature proved timeless. Steel engines froze, fuel turned sludgy, and radios crackled uselessly in the snow. The march feels endless. Time no longer moves by clocks, but by steps. Crunch, crunch, crunch. You try counting to keep sane, but you always lose track around 40. The cold seems to erase memory as well as sensation. A comrade ahead stumbles, rights himself, then stumbles again. You think of helping, but your body is locked into its own narrow fight. Every extra movement feels expensive, like buying bread with your last coin. At dusk, the sky goes purple, a bruised shade. The column halts. You're told to dig in, to prepare for night. The shovel handle burns your palm even through wool. Every clod of earth is stone, frozen solid. So you end up scraping more than digging. Still, you make a shallow scrape in the snow, just enough to crouch in. You press your back against it, trying to hide from the wind. The first laugh of the night erupts nearby. It isn't joyful, it's sharp, broken, like glass crunching under boots. Someone cracked a joke about sleeping without toes, and somehow it spiraled into hysterics. A few men laugh along, though most just stare. You think it sounds eerie, laughter mixing with the howling wind. But you'll hear much more of it soon. For now, you close your eyes, hoping to dream of fire, of warmth, of any world not covered in this endless white. You don't know yet that even your own laughter may betray you before long. The morning greets you not with sunlight, but with a biting slap of wind that sneaks under every fold of your uniform. Your eyelids are heavy from broken sleep, the kind of rest where you wake up every few minutes just to make sure your feet are still attached. The frost that collected in your breath overnight now crusts your scarf like plaster. You peel it away and it cracks, leaving a faint smell of wool and ice. Orders come quickly. There is always marching. No breakfast beyond a small square of bread and something that once resembled coffee but now tastes like burned snow. You swallow it anyway, letting the bitterness remind you that at least your tongue still works. The front stretches ahead, flat plains and broken fences, nothing else. The horizon is an illusion, always promising to be closer than it really is. It's like walking inside a painting that refuses to change. You step forward with men on either side of you, each a mirror of yourself, thin gray, bent into the wind. Someone mutters about Moscow again, how the city must be near. The officers once promised the skyline of the Kremlin would be visible by now. Instead, you see nothing but fields. Historians still argue about those promises, whether they were genuine beliefs or deliberate lies to keep morale high. You, standing here with a rifle heavier than your legs, are too cold to care about the debate. The first real shock of Russian winter hits now. Last night was bitter, but today the temperature drops even lower. It's as if the sky has decided to erase warmth altogether. Your breath doesn't just fog, it freezes midair and falls as tiny crystals. You reach for your water canteen, only to find it's turned solid, one frozen cylinder. Someone suggests tucking it inside your coat to thaw. You laugh dryly. There is nothing inside your coat that could melt even a snowflake. The wind picks up around midday, sweeping snow into spirals that sting your face like needles. Every gust makes you stagger. The column slows, men leaning into the gale as though walking through syrup. You picture the generals back in heated train cars, sipping tea, and you almost grin at the absurdity. Joke number 1 of the day. The only thing advancing faster than the German army is frostbite. A small group halts by the roadside. One soldier crouches, pulling off his boot. His foot is black at the toes, hard as wood. The men around him groan, but there is no doctor nearby. No morphine, no chance of saving it. They argue about whether to leave him or drag him along. The officer insists they move on. Later, you'll remember this moment because the soldier, left behind, starts singing a marching song through chattering teeth. The sound echoes strangely cheerful, fading into the snow. You continue forward, but the thought won't leave you. Maybe you too will start singing nonsense before the cold takes you. The Soviets, you've heard, are better prepared. Their uniforms are thicker, padded with sheepskin. Their boots are lined with felt, made for this climate. Even their rifles are less likely to jam in the frost. German engineers prided themselves on precision, but precision is delicate, freezes, it cracks. A Soviet rifle, clunkier, survives. Historians argue whether the Wehrmacht truly believed they could crush Russia before winter, or if they simply gambled on it. The truth is buried under the snow, with the men who won't live to debate. By afternoon, hunger gnaws again. Rations shrink daily. You dig into your pocket and find a sardine tin, edges sharp against your fingers. Remember that sardine tin later in the ruins of Stalingrad. You'll see others clutching the same tins like treasure, trading them for cigarettes or even for a chance to warm hands over a fire. For now, you can't even open it. The lid is frozen shut. You hold it under your armpit, hoping your body heat might work as a can opener. Joke number 2. Congratulations, you've invented the world's slowest cooking method. The march continues. Snow deepens, boots sink, legs ache. Each step is a negotiation between willpower and gravity. The silence becomes oppressive, broken only by the occasional bark of an officer or the cough of a soldier. You start to notice the absurd things, how the snow squeaks like styrofoam, how your breath sounds like tearing paper, how even the sky seems brittle. Toward evening, the column pauses. You drop to your knees, exhausted. A fellow soldier beside you grins suddenly, wide and strange. He starts giggling at nothing, just staring at the sky and laughing. Everyone looks at him, uneasy. He insists he feels warm, that he could strip down and dance. You know enough to recognize this isn't courage. It's the beginning of hypothermia's trick. When the body gets too cold, the brain tells you it's hot. Later, historians will note countless reports of soldiers stripping naked in the snow before collapsing. Right now, you only see a man peeling his coat while chuckling like a drunk at a tavern. The officer yells, forcing others to restrain him, bundling the coat back on. The man keeps laughing, tears freezing at the corners of his eyes. A chill deeper than winter runs through you, not in your body, but in your mind. You realize the cold doesn't just kill, it mocks. It turns death into a joke. Night falls early. The camp is a scatter of shallow pits in the snow, each man curling into himself like a shrimp. A few fires flicker, barely alive. You press your hands close, but the smoke stings your eyes before any heat reaches your skin. You cough and back away, choosing frozen lungs over watery eyes. As you lie down, your rifle beside you, you notice frost forming on the barrel like lace. It would be pretty if it weren't also lethal. Someone mutters that the Russians must be laughing in their own trenches, better dressed, better fed, and strangely, you want to laugh too. Joke number 3. You've joined the most miserable comedy club in the world, where the punchline is always frostbite. You close your eyes, shivering. The laughter you heard earlier still rings in your ears. Tomorrow, it may be your turn. You wake with a kind of jolt that makes your heart thud hard against your ribs, not because of a nightmare, but because you weren't sure you'd ever wake again. Your eyelids are rimmed with frost, lashes stuck together. You pry them apart with fingers that feel like brittle sticks. Morning isn't warm, it's colder. The kind of cold that sneaks under your skin and settles in your bones, whispering that it's never leaving around you. Men stir from shallow graves dug in the snow. A few don't stir at all. Their faces are dusted with frost, eyes still closed, as though they simply decided not to bother with another march. You can't linger on them. Orders come fast. Form up, move out. The crunch of boots resumes. Step, crack, breath. The rhythm is so monotonous, it becomes a drumbeat in your skull. To distract yourself, you try to wiggle your toes inside your boots. At first, nothing. Then a faint ache, like someone lightly tapping a hammer against your bones. At least they're still there. For now, frostbite is whispered like a curse among the column. Men tell stories about comrades waking up without fingers, about ears snapping off like icicles. A rumor circulates that one soldier bit into his bread and his lip froze to it. You don't know if that's true, but you believe it. At these temperatures, any cruelty seems possible. By midday, you stop to rest. The air doesn't soften it, only gets sharper, like knives drawn across your cheeks. A comrade, Kurt, pulls off his glove to check his hand. The skin is pale, waxy, almost translucent. He rubs it furiously, muttering curses. Someone else warns him that rubbing frostbite makes it worse. But old instincts die hard. He wants blood back in his fingers. You watch as his movements slow, and then he laughs, softly at first, then louder, as if the absurdity of having useless hands is suddenly hilarious. That laughter unsettles everyone. It's too raw, too wild. Hypothermia plays strange tricks. First pain, then numbness, then a creeping sense of warmth, and finally, a cruel euphoria that makes death seem like a practical joke. Historians still debate whether laughter was common on the Eastern Front, or whether the stories are exaggerated from a few eyewitness accounts. What's certain is that men like Kurt did laugh, loud and unrestrained, while their bodies quietly froze. You march on. The ground is uneven, patched with drifts, waist deep in some places. Each step requires lifting your leg like a puppet, only for the snow to swallow it. Your energy drains as though poured straight into the ground. You look up at the sky, it's blank, washed in white light, as if the sun itself has been erased. The rations arrive late that day. A tin of meat, frozen solid, is hacked apart with bayonets. Everyone takes a sliver, chewing it like leather. You press your piece against your teeth and suck, pretending it's soup. One soldier jokes that it tastes like horse. Another mutters, "Be grateful it isn't worse." You think about the siege of Leningrad, where stories of people boiling wallpaper glue for food circulate. Compared to that, your icy meat scrap almost feels luxurious. Almost later, as dusk lowers its heavy curtain, you hear more whispers, this time not about frostbite, but about men starting to lose their minds. Someone claims he saw a soldier strip off his coat and dance in the snow, laughing until he collapsed. Another insists he watched a man talk to his rifle as though it were his sweetheart. You're skeptical at first, but the way Kurt laughed earlier lingers in your mind. You wonder if soon you'll be speaking sweet nothings to your own Mouser that night. You huddle in a makeshift trench scraped from ice. The wind howls over the lip, carrying with it the distant crack of artillery. Somewhere ahead lies Moscow, though you no longer believe in it. It feels like a fable, a mirage generals invented. What's real is this pit, this cold, and the muffled coughs of the men pressed close. One soldier pulls out a harmonica. The notes are thin, warbling, barely strong enough to rise over the wind. Yet, for a moment, the sound feels like warmth. You close your eyes and imagine a tavern back home, firelight flickering, mugs clinking. The illusion lasts only as long as the tune. When it ends, silence crashes back down. Then, from the far end of the trench, someone chuckles. Not the polite laugh of soldiers sharing a joke, but a bubbling giggle out of place. The man next to him hisses for silence, but the giggle swells into laughter loud, wheezing, unstoppable. You glance over and see the man's eyes wide, his cheeks red, his hands shaking violently. He seems to think the trench itself is funny. Within minutes, others are joining in, caught by the contagion of it. The sound is eerie, a chorus of laughter in the middle of the freezing dark. You feel a tickle of humor, too, though you can't explain why. Maybe it's the absurdity of being here at all. Maybe your brain, desperate for relief, clings to the ridiculous. You press your mouth shut, trying not to join in, but a small chuckle escapes anyway. It strikes you that laughter here isn't rebellion, it's surrender, a way of telling the cold, you've won, but I'll leave smiling. By midnight, the laughter has died down. A few men sleep, curled tight. A few never wake again. Snow drifts quietly over their bodies, smoothing them into the landscape. You lie awake, staring at your frosted rifle barrel. You wonder whether tomorrow you'll still be walking, or whether the cold will claim your voice, turning it into one last laugh, carried off by the wind. Morning crawls in without color. The sky is the same dull white as the ground, horizon erased, everything blending into one endless sheet. You blink, trying to decide whether your eyes are even open. The snow feels brighter than light itself, reflecting straight into your skull. Someone mutters that the sun hasn't risen, it's simply hiding, ashamed to see you like this. You almost want to thank him for the joke, but your lips are too stiff. You're handed rations, a crust of bread, frozen harder than stone. You wrap it against your helmet just to hear the clink. The sound makes a few men smile grimly, bread doubling as a weapon. You try to chew it, teeth aching, jaw trembling. Historians still debate how many calories German soldiers had on these winter marches. Estimates run from a meager 1,000 a day to almost nothing. Either way, it wasn't enough to fight a battle, let alone climb it. By now, you're learning the art of walking without thinking. Your legs move automatically, like clockwork. The rhythm is hypnotic. Sometimes you realize minutes have passed without a single thought in your head. Other times, your mind drifts to strange places, old jokes from school, a song half remembered, the face of a girl back home whose name you can't even recall clearly anymore. The cold scrapes memory away, as easily as it strips bark from trees. You try to focus on small comforts, a tin can rattling in your pocket, the muffled sound of your own breath, even the crunch of snow beneath your boots, though the boots are tearing your feet apart. When you finally stop for a break, you pull them off, and the sight makes you gag. Your toes are gray, skin blistered and cracked, nails blackened. Someone else looks over and shrugs. "At least they're still there," he says. You force a laugh, though it sounds hollow nearby. Kurt, the one who laughed yesterday at his useless hands, sits staring at them again. He flexes his fingers slowly, watching as if they belong to someone else. Then he bursts into another chuckle. This time, no one bothers to stop him. The men around just exchange uneasy glances. It's becoming normal, this laughter, to normal. That afternoon, you march past a small Russian village. Most of the houses are abandoned, doors hanging off their hinges, windows broken. A few faces peek from the shadows, thin women, bundled children. They watch silently as you stumble by. One boy holds up 2 fingers, grinning. You can't tell whether it's mockery or sympathy. Someone mutters that Soviet civilians often survived winters on potato peel soup. You glance at your hard bread and think, maybe they had the better deal. A debate starts among the column. Some argue the army should requisition everything in the village. Others whisper it's pointless, there's nothing left to take. Historians still argue over how systematic German looting really was during this stage of the war. What you see with your own eyes is simpler. A woman holding a bundle of firewood tighter than gold, as though you might snatch it. By evening, the march halts. You dig into the snow again, carving a shallow pit to crouch in. The air feels like glass shattering against your face. Your hands tremble so badly you almost drop your rifle. You press it to your chest, as if the cold metal might remind you of purpose. Then, as the fire sputters weakly, a soldier begins telling a story, something absurd, about a goose that supposedly followed the unit for days, honking at every officer. It's ridiculous, impossible, yet you find yourself laughing. The sound is sharp, surprising even you. Others laugh too. The firelight flickers across their cracked lips, their sunken cheeks. For a brief moment, you all look like boys around a campfire, not soldiers lost in the snow. But the laughter doesn't stop. It stretches, turns brittle. One man tilts his head back, cackling at the stars. Another wheezes so hard he can't breathe. You realize this isn't joy, it's the creeping madness of cold, the brain releasing tension in the only way left. It's unnerving, like watching puppets jerk their strings. You curl deeper into your trench, covering your ears, trying to shut out the sound. Yet even with your palms pressed tight, the laughter seeps in. You feel a dangerous tickle rising in your own chest. You want to laugh too, not because anything is funny, but because your body insists it's easier than crying. Later that night, silence returns. A few men don't wake when dawn comes. Snow covers their faces gently, as if trying to erase the fact they were ever here. You stare at them, feeling no shock, only a dull ache. Death has become so common, it feels like just another order from command. March, eat, freeze, laugh, collapse, repeat. And as you shoulder your rifle once more, you can't help but wonder, when your turn comes, will you die quietly? Or will you join the chorus of laughter that drifts across these frozen fields? The wind has a personality now. It no longer feels like air moving it, feels like an enemy, one that mocks you with every icy gust. Each blast steals a layer of warmth you didn't know you still had. It rattles your helmet straps, whistles through the cracks in your scarf, and makes your rifle creak like an old door hinge. You lean forward into it, shoulders hunched, as if bowing before some invisible master. The column trudges along, boots leaving shallow craters in the snow. Some of those craters never fill in because the men who made them fall behind and vanish. No orders are shouted to retrieve them. You hear only the steady crunch, crunch, crunch of progress. You wonder, if you fell now, would anyone look back? Probably not. Survival has made everyone selfish in quiet ways. By midday, you come across a group gathered around a pathetic campfire. They're hacking at a log with frozen bayonets, sparks flying but no real flames catching. The wood is green, wet, uncooperative. The fire smolders rather than burns, coughing up smoke that clings to your uniform. A comrade mutters that smoke is almost better than heat. It makes you think of warmth even when there is none. Around this weak fire, something unexpected happens. The men start telling jokes. Not good jokes, silly, recycled ones. About officers with sticks so far up their backs they can't bend over. About bread so hard it could stop a Soviet bullet. The laughter that follows is strange, forced at first, then oddly free. You can feel it ripple through the group, loosening shoulders, unclenching jaws. For a brief moment, the cold feels less powerful, but it's a fragile relief. One soldier, Ernst, throws his head back and starts howling, his laugh wild and ragged. Everyone freezes. His face is pale, lips blue, eyes glassy. He laughs harder, clutching his stomach as if the joke of existence itself has finally landed. The sound echoes off the snow like the bark of a mad dog. You watch, unsettled, as he tears open the buttons of his coat, insisting he's burning up. Others rush to restrain him, pinning the coat shut. He fights them, giggling hysterically the entire time. This is hypothermia in full bloom. You've heard the term before, but now you see it alive. The body cools, shivering slows, then stops. The brain, confused, mistakes freezing for warmth. Euphoria sets in. Clothing comes off, and laughter, always laughter, spills out, a cruel parody of joy. Historians still argue whether this was widespread, or only a handful of cases reported and exaggerated. You don't need a historian. You just heard Ernst laughing like a lunatic, while death gnawed at his bones. Later, as the march resumes, you feel jittery. Every time someone chuckles, you flinch. You can't tell anymore what's humor and what's hypothermia. That evening, the men gather around another fire, this one barely more than glowing embers. A thin stew is passed around water, with a few slices of turnip floating like ghosts. You sip it slowly, savoring the illusion of food. Someone jokes that it tastes like home cooking, if home was a swamp. You force a smile. Better to laugh than to despair, you think. But a darker thought creeps in. Maybe despair and laughter are the same thing out here. The officers pretend not to notice the giggling fits that strike some men. They bark orders louder, as though shouting might scare away madness. One insists the march will resume at dawn, and Moscow is close. You don't believe him. No one does. But no one argues either. You're too tired, too cold, too afraid of becoming Ernst that night. As you lie in your shallow snow pit, you hear faint chuckles drifting across the camp. Not many, just a few, but they rise and fall in the wind, unsettling, like hyenas in the distance. You shiver harder, not from cold this time, but from the realization that death has a sense of humor, and it's laughing right alongside you. You close your eyes, clutching your rifle. You tell yourself you'll survive, that you won't let the laughter claim you. But deep inside, you wonder, when the cold finally wins, will you resist, or will you join in? laughing your way into the snow. The morning is strangely quiet, as though the whole landscape is holding its breath. You crawl from your shallow pit and see only a world of white and gray. The snow stretches forever, smooth and untouched, except for the long trail of footprints carved by your column. The silence presses down on you. No birds, no dogs, not even the creak of branches, just the faint hiss of wind and the sound of men breathing heavily through scarves stiff with ice. The march begins again. The rhythm now so automatic, you barely notice your legs moving, one foot, then the other. You stare at the back of the man in front of you, his shoulders hunched, his rifle bobbing with each step. He could be anyone. In this weather, faces are erased, individuality stripped away. You're all just shapes, trudging forward, mechanical, lifeless. The silence is unsettling. Normally, soldiers murmur, curse, or trade jokes. Today, hardly a word. The snow muffles even the crunch of boots. It feels like walking through a dream, or worse, through a painting where nothing really moves except you. You try to hum to yourself, but your throat is so dry it comes out as a rasp. By midday, the line halts. A man up ahead has collapsed, face first, into the snow. At first, you think he's just stumbled, but no one helps him up. The officer shouts, but the man doesn't move. Finally, two comrades drag him upright. His eyes are open, blank, mouth curved in a faint smile. He chuckles weakly, almost like a hiccup. Then his body goes limp again. The officer orders the line to continue. You glance back and see the man being laid gently by the roadside, snowflakes gathering on his face. That smile sticks with you. Was it peace, madness, or just the muscles of a body shutting down? Historians still argue whether the Germans at Moscow and Stalingrad underestimated hypothermia's mental effects or simply ignored them. What you know for certain is that this man died half smiling, and it chills you more than any icy wind could. You trudge on. The snow deepens. Each step is a battle against resistance, as if the earth itself wants to drag you down. You can feel your strength draining, little by little, like water leaking from a cracked flask. To distract yourself, you start counting steps, 1 to 50, then start again. It keeps your mind from dissolving into the same blankness you saw in that dead man's eyes. Later, you stop in a small grove of birch trees, their white trunks blending into the snow so perfectly they seem like ghosts. The men slump against them, sliding down to sit. You press your back against a tree and close your eyes. That's when you hear it, a laugh, not loud, but sharp, cutting through the silence. You open your eyes and see one of the younger soldiers, barely more than a boy, grinning at nothing. He rocks back and forth, giggling as though someone has just whispered the funniest joke in the world. His comrades stare, uneasy. The boy claps his hands together, then suddenly shouts, "Hot, it's hot," and starts fumbling with his coat buttons. Two men grab him, forcing his coat closed. He thrashes, laughing all the while. His voice is high, hysterical, carrying across the grove. A few others begin laughing nervously, too, unable to help themselves. It spreads like a contagion, one chuckle setting off another. You sit frozen, not from the cold this time, but from dread. It feels like the entire army could unravel right here, in this patch of trees. Laughter echoing until nothing's left. Finally, the officer storms over, barking threats, slapping the boy across the face. The laughter dies, leaving only shallow breaths and the rustle of wind through branches. The boy slumps against the tree, eyes vacant. You stare at him, wondering if he'll survive the night. The march resumes. Hours later, You pass through another abandoned village. A few chickens scatter, miraculously alive in this wasteland. One soldier chases after them half-heartedly, slipping on ice. He tumbles into the snow and bursts out laughing. It's real laughter, this time short, sharp, almost cheerful. A few others laugh too, and for a moment you do as well. But the moment fades when you see the look in his eyes, glazed, unfocused, already slipping into that dangerous territory between amusement and delirium. That evening, as you huddle in your shallow pit, you realize something disturbing. The laughter no longer shocks you. It's becoming part of the rhythm, as expected as the crunch of boots or the hiss of wind. You close your eyes, pressing your rifle close, and whisper to yourself, "Don't laugh, not yet, not like them." But as you drift toward uneasy sleep, you feel the corners of your mouth twitch, and you wonder when your body finally gives in, will you die with a smile too? The shadows of Moscow feel close now, though that's a lie you repeat to yourself more than a fact. No one in your column has seen so much as a brick of the city. Still, every officer insists, just a little farther. You imagine the Kremlin's red walls shimmering like a mirage. Somewhere ahead, always just out of reach. The snow underfoot crunches differently, here wetter, as though the land itself is sighing under the weight of war. Each bootstep leaves a deep print that instantly fills with powder, erasing evidence you were ever there. The whole march begins to feel like a rehearsal for vanishing. Your uniform is stiff with frost, a shell more than clothing. The scarf around your neck has frozen to your collar. When you tug, it rips a few hairs from your skin. You try to laugh at it, muttering that the cold demands tribute in hair before it takes the rest of you. A comrade chuckles weakly, but the sound dies in his throat by midday. You pass the ruins of a farmhouse shelled weeks earlier. The walls lean inward like a drunk about to collapse. Inside, icicles dangle from the rafters, each catching the dim light like glass knives. Someone spots a barrel frozen half full of rainwater. Men rush to chip at it, hacking with bayonets, filling canteens with cloudy ice chunks. The officer protests at first, then gives up. Discipline is brittle in this weather. You suck on the ice, teeth aching, and for a moment it feels refreshing. But then the cold spreads deeper, down into your chest, a reminder that even relief here is dangerous. At the next rest, a strange mood takes over the group. Tired faces crack into grins. Someone starts humming a silly tune. Another adds words, and suddenly half the trench is singing about sausages back in Bavaria. The laughter that follows is loud, rolling, contagious. You join in, too, almost against your will. For a few minutes, you forget the numbness in your feet. You forget the man who collapsed yesterday. You forget Moscow is still miles away, but laughter here always tips into something darker. One man keeps laughing long after the others fall silent. His chuckles turn to wheezing, his body shaking violently. He claws at his coat, insisting he's burning. The officer yells, but no one moves to help. Everyone just watches, mesmerized, as he rips open his jacket in the snow. His pale chest heaves with each breath, steam curling upward. He grins, wide, eyes wild, then suddenly topples sideways, still laughing. His giggles echo a moment longer, then cut off as if someone pressed mute. No one speaks. You stare, heart pounding, throat dry. The officer mutters an order to move on, and just like that, the column resumes. The body is left behind, half buried already by drifting snow. That night, you crouch in your pit, trying to block out the memory of his laughter. But it clings to you, a sound too close to joy, too far from sanity. You close your eyes and remind yourself, this is hypothermia, nothing more. The body misfires, the brain tricks itself, and death sneaks in disguised as comedy. Historians still debate whether this laughter before death was common or just recorded in a handful of diaries. To you, it doesn't matter. You've heard it, seen it. It's real as the fire sputters. Someone tells a story about Napoleon's army, how men back then also froze on this very land, some smiling, some delirious. The joke goes that the Russians didn't even need bullets. They had winter as their best general. You picture Napoleon's soldiers lined up beside you, ghosts in ragged coats, grinning as they fall. For the first time, you feel part of a history bigger than your war. One long procession of armies, swallowed by snow. Later, when sleep creeps in, you dream of warmth. Not of stoves or blankets, but of laughter, warm, genuine, shared with friends back home. You wake with a start, realizing the sound is still there, faint, drifting across the camp. Someone else is laughing again, softly, rhythmically, as if telling jokes to the stars. You press your hands over your ears, but even then, you hear it inside your own chest, a quiet chuckle threatening to rise. You feel it first in your legs. Not pain would mean life, but something stranger, a heaviness, as though your bones have been replaced by lead. The march continues anyway. The column stretches ahead in a wavering line, every man stooped, every step mechanical. No one looks like a soldier anymore. You look like scarecrows ripped from fields and forced to walk. The weather plays cruel tricks. A faint sunlight peeks through the clouds for a few minutes, just enough to convince you the worst is over. Your spirits lift slightly, shoulders straighten. Then the wind rises again, snapping across your face with icy claws, and the hope collapses like the farmhouse you passed days ago. You realize warmth here is like a rumor, exists only to betray you. You notice how your shivers have slowed. At first, that seems like a blessing. No more teeth chattering, no more tremors. But deep down, you know it isn't good. Shivering means your body is still fighting. When it stops, the cold is winning. Historians point out that soldiers often mistook this stillness for strength, pushing on with false confidence. The truth was simpler. The body was shutting down, conserving the last sparks. Around you, others begin to change too. A man giggles as he stumbles, catching himself on his rifle like it's a dance partner. Another mutters nonsense, words tumbling into the air like broken glass. Hypothermia doesn't just freeze the body, it scrambles the mind. Medical officers would later write about paradoxical undressing, men convinced they were burning hot, tearing off their coats in blizzards. You see the beginnings of it here, in the flushed cheeks, the sudden grins, the laughter bubbling where it doesn't belong. Kurt, your comrade with the bad hands, has stopped complaining altogether. Instead, he tells riddles, bad riddles. He asks, "What's colder than Moscow?" and answers, "My mother-in-law's heart." A few men laugh, more out of desperation than humor. You laugh too softly, though it feels strange in your throat, like forcing air through a cracked whistle. The column halts briefly. You slump against a snowbank, chest heaving. You reach for your canteen, shake it, and hear only ice rattling. You chip at it with your knife until a few shards fall loose. They melt slowly on your tongue, refreshing at first, then chilling deeper into your chest. You cough, teeth clicking. A fellow soldier warns you. Ice steals heat. You nod, but swallow it anyway. What choice do you have? As dusk creeps in, the land seems endless. You wonder if Moscow even exists, or if it's just a story officers tell. like a bedtime tale for exhausted men. The thought makes you chuckle bitterly. Bedtime in this world means curling up in snow, rifle for a pillow, frost creeping into your lungs. That night the fire is weak, more smoke than flame. You huddle close anyway, hands raw and cracked. A strange calm settles over the group. No one argues, no one curses. Instead, there's laughter, soft at first, then growing. Men laugh at nothing, the way the smoke curls, the squeak of boots, the absurdity of surviving another day only to freeze tomorrow. It's not joy, it's hysteria, creeping like frost into every mind. One soldier, Ernst, the same who once ripped at his coat, begins humming between laughs. A silly melody, off-key, yet oddly comforting. Others join in, chuckling through the tune, until the camp sounds like a drunk choir. You try to resist, but soon your lips curl too. The sound vibrates in your chest, unnatural but warm in its own twisted way. You realize something dangerous. The laughter makes the cold feel less sharp. It numbs, distracts. Maybe that's why it comes so easily now. Your body, desperate, grabs at humor like a blanket. But you also know what it means. Men don't laugh like this unless they're slipping toward the edge. Later, lying in your shallow pit, you can't sleep. The stars above glitter, cruelly, bright and cold. Around you, chuckles ripple through the night, echoing in the wind. You shut your eyes, telling yourself to hold on, but the corners of your mouth twitch anyway, and you feel the first quiet laugh escape your throat. The night leaves you brittle. When morning comes, you feel less like a man and more like a hollow shell pulled upright by invisible strings. Your joints creak, your breath rasps, and every blink feels like lifting weights with your eyelids. Yet the march resumes, as it always does, as though misery itself has a schedule. You notice it right away, more laughter than before. Not joyous laughter, not even the nervous chuckles of men telling bad jokes. This is stranger, spontaneous bursts of giggles echoing across the column, out of rhythm with anything real. One man stumbles, lands face first in the snow, and instead of groaning, he bursts out laughing. Another trips over a root and cackles like he's heard the funniest tale. The sound makes your skin crawl. You've read about men breaking under stress, but this isn't stress, it's something colder, deeper. Hypothermia doesn't just numb, it rewires. Historians later note that German medical staff had almost no training for mental collapse brought on by cold. Reports describe inexplicable mirth before collapse, though officers at the time often dismissed it as cowardice or drunkenness. You watch it happen in real time, soldiers turning into comedians for an audience of snow at a midday halt. The madness grows louder. A group of men in a foxhole erupt into uncontrollable giggles. They pass around a tin of frozen beans, chipping at it with bayonets, and laugh as if it's a banquet. One declares he's dining in Paris, raises a shard of ice like a toast, and the others howl. Their faces are pale, lips blue, eyes shining with feverish delight. You can't bring yourself to laugh with them, but part of you envies the release. You chew on your ration bread that tastes like chalk hand stare. A peculiar thought strikes you. Maybe the laughter is a rebellion of sorts. When the cold steals everything, warmth, dignity, even breath, the last weapon left is absurdity. To laugh in the face of death is to rob it of solemnity. But as soon as you think this, another man collapses mid-laugh, body stiffening in the snow. The irony isn't lost on you. Death is laughing too, and it always has the last joke. That evening, you huddle with a few comrades near a struggling fire. The smoke stings your eyes, but you lean in anyway, desperate for even the illusion of warmth. A soldier across from you begins telling a story something about his wedding day. When his bride's veil caught on fire from a candle, he laughs at his own tale, tears freezing on his cheeks. Soon the others join, the fire crackling beneath their voices. The scene should feel human, comforting, but it doesn't. The laughter is too loud, too jagged. It carries an edge, like glass breaking. You lean back, unsettled, and remember Kurt's bad riddles, Ernst's wild cackles, the boy in the birch grove, tearing off his coat. A pattern is forming. Laughter isn't just relief anymore. It's a symptom. You clutch your rifle harder, as though the weight of it could anchor you to sanity. Later that night, you're assigned to a shallow watchpost overlooking the snowbound plain. The world is silent, except for the occasional crack of distant artillery. Then, faintly, you hear it again. Laughter. Not from the camp behind you, but out there, drifting over the snow. For a moment, you think it must be Soviets taunting you, but the sound is too broken, too eerie. You realize it's your own men, scattered along the line, giggling into the night like children telling secrets under blankets. The sound doesn't fade, it multiplies, carried on the wind, turning into a chorus. You grip your rifle tighter, heart pounding. It feels less like guarding an army and more like watching over a madhouse. By dawn, several soldiers are missing. No gunfire, no attack, just gone. You picture them wandering into the snow, laughing as they shed their coats, convinced they're stepping into warmth. You imagine their final chuckles, echoing until snow buries them. The thought makes you shiver harder than the cold itself. When the march resumes, you stay silent, determined not to let laughter escape your lips again. But inside, you feel it building a pressure, a dangerous tickle. You bite your tongue, clench your jaw, anything to keep it contained. Because here, laughter is no longer a friend. It's the sound of death rehearsing. By now, the cold has changed you. It isn't just something outside your body has seeped inward, a tenant in your bones. Each morning you wake and wonder what part of you it has claimed overnight. Fingers, toes, maybe the edge of your mind. You wiggle them all, just to check, and breathe a shaky sigh of relief when they still respond. The column moves slowly today, dragging itself across the snow like a wounded animal. The landscape never changes. Flat fields, frozen streams, skeletal trees. It's as if you've been marching in a circle for weeks. Some men start swearing they've seen the same tree 3 days in a row. Others don't speak at all anymore, just shuffle forward, eyes glazed, mouths half open. Then you notice something peculiar. Coats, buttons undone, scarves pulled loose, helmets tossed aside. Men are shedding clothing as though it's springtime. You see one soldier rip off his gloves and fling them into the snow, laughing as he does it. Another peels open his tunic, sighing with relief, as though the cold air is a bath of warmth. The officers bark orders, trying to stop the madness, but the men barely listen. Their giggles rise, higher and sharper, until the whole column seems drunk on invisible wine. This is the stage you've been dreading, paradoxical undressing. The medical term sounds clinical, but here it looks like suicide disguised as joy. Hypothermia has convinced these men they're burning up. Their bodies, shutting down, have chosen the cruelest illusion of all. Historians still debate how widespread it was, but diaries mention it enough to prove it wasn't rare. You watch it unfold with your own eyes and wish you didn't have to. One man beside you, Otto, grins broadly as he unbuckles his belt. "It's summer again," he mutters, chuckling. His chest is bare within moments, skin already mottled purple. You lunge forward, trying to restrain him, but he bats you away with surprising strength. He collapses a minute later, still smiling, teeth clenched in a frozen laugh. Snow begins to cover him almost instantly, as if eager to erase the scene. The officers can't control it anymore. They shout, threaten, even strike men with rifle butts. But the laughter rolls on, carried by the wind. It spreads like wildfire through the ranks. Every stumble, every slip, every absurdity sparks giggles. You hear one man laugh so hard, he coughs blood. Another throws his helmet into the snow and declares himself a king. The madness feels contagious, you worry, that even hearing it too long might unravel you. When the column finally halts, you dig into the snow with trembling hands, trying to carve a pit. The ground resists like stone, but you keep at it, desperate for distraction. Around you, men laugh as they dig, shovels clanging against frozen earth. It sounds like workers at a carnival, rather than soldiers preparing to survive the night. You grip your shovel tighter, whispering to yourself, "Don't laugh, don't join them." Later, huddled near a fire that's more smoke than flame, you feel the urge again. Someone jokes that the stew tastes better than his wife's cooking. Another man claps him on the back, roaring with laughter. You can't help it to chuckle too. The sound escapes your throat like a betrayal. It feels good, warm even, but it terrifies you, because you know what follows laughter in this world. Collapse, stillness, snow. The officers huddle together, their voices sharp, debating whether to press on or dig in. Historians still argue whether the German command should have retreated from Moscow's outskirts in 1941, sparing thousands of lives. Instead, orders then and now remain contradictory. Push forward, hold the line, dig trenches, advance tomorrow. To you, it's all the same. Every order ends with the same destination, deeper into the cold. That night, as you curl in your pit, you hear it again, the sound that haunts you now more than gunfire. Laughter drifting across the camp, rising, falling, carried on the wind like some eerie choir. Some of it is sharp, hysterical, some soft, almost tender, but none of it is sane. You pull your scarf tighter, press your rifle to your chest, and shut your eyes. You tell yourself again, don't laugh, don't give in. But the longer you lie there, the more your lips twitch, the more you feel that strange, treacherous warmth, and you wonder, with dread, if tomorrow you'll be the one throwing off your coat, grinning as the snow claims you. The march presses onward, though by now it feels less like an advance and more like a slow dissolving of men into the snow. The road to Moscow is no longer a line of triumph, but a graveyard in motion. You can see it in every face, sunken cheeks, cracked lips, eyes that stare without focus. The laughter from last night still echoes in your ears. Even now, you hear it bubbling occasionally from the ranks. Sudden bursts that don't match the misery around you. You pass the remains of a village, burned, timbers jutting from snow like blackened bones. The air smells faintly of smoke, though the fire must have gone out weeks ago. A dog darts across the road, ribs sticking out, fur matted. It vanishes as quickly as it appeared, leaving only paw prints behind. Someone mutters they should have caught it for meat. Another chuckles and says, "Better soldier than supper." The group erupts in uneasy laughter, a reminder of how close hunger and madness walk hand in hand. The officers grow harsher. They bark orders with red faces, stamping boots, desperate to remind everyone there's still an army here, not just a mob of frozen men. But their voices carry less weight than the wind. No one really listens. The real commander is the cold, and it has been issuing its orders clearly. Shiver, stumble, laugh, collapse. By midday, the laughter spreads again. A patrol of men digging shallow foxholes suddenly bursts into giggles. One of them throws a handful of snow at another's face, and soon they're pelting each other like schoolboys, shrieking with amusement. The sight is bizarre, even charming for a heartbeat, until one of them collapses mid-throw, still chuckling as he falls flat. The others freeze, their laughter choking in their throats. Then, silence. Just another body in the snow. You can't shake the sense that the Eastern Front itself is laughing at you. Here you are, part of the most feared army in the world, undone not by Soviet bullets, but by a climate that has destroyed invaders for centuries. Napoleon's men marched this way too, and many of them must have laughed in delirium before freezing. History repeats, only the uniforms change. Historians still debate whether Hitler's hubris or logistical failure doomed the Moscow campaign. For you, there's no debate. It was the snow all along. That evening, the campfire circle feels surreal. Men huddle close, steam rising from damp coats. Someone pulls out a harmonica and plays a jaunty tune, the kind you'd expect in a beer hall. A few soldiers start singing along, voices cracked but enthusiastic. The music is off-key, ragged, but it carries a strange beauty against the endless silence. Then, as the tune builds, the men burst into laughter, high, wild, unstoppable. They laugh until tears freeze on their cheeks, until their sides shake, until one of them coughs up blood. You don't join this time. You sit back, watching, gripping your rifle like a lifeline. You can feel the laugh trying to claw its way out of your chest, but you choke it down. You've seen too many men fall after the laughter. You know what it means now. It isn't joy or defiance or even camaraderie. It's surrender. As night deepens, you crawl into your pit. The snow piles high around you, muffling every sound except the occasional giggle carried on the wind. You pull your scarf tighter, eyes squeezed shut. You tell yourself to hold on, to outlast the laughter, to see another dawn. But inside, you can feel something shifting. The cold is winning. The heaviness in your limbs grows. And somewhere in the back of your throat, a chuckle lurks, waiting for the moment when your guard finally slips. You wake to the sound of boots stomping snow and a few faint giggles drifting across the camp. At first, you think it's a dream. Laughter feels so out of place here, but when you open your eyes, you see two men sitting upright, shoulders shaking as they chuckle at nothing. Their faces are pale, lips cracked, teeth blackened by frost. Yet their laughter is bright and strange, as if they've stumbled into a tavern instead of a frozen trench. You sit up slowly, joints creaking, breath puffing white. Your body feels heavier every day, but your mind is starting to float. Thoughts slip like fish from your grasp. You wonder if that's how the laughter begins, not with jokes, but with drifting thoughts that forget how to stay anchored. That the column gathers again. Marching resumes, though calling it marching feels generous. It's more like stumbling in unison. Some men hold themselves stiff, others sway side to side like drunkards. More helmets are gone, more jackets flung open. It looks less like an army and more like a carnival parade gone terribly wrong. Kurt, with his ruined hands, shuffles beside you. He grins, suddenly whispers, "I've solved it." You ask what he means, but he only chuckles. His eyes are bright with fever or madness, or both. He mutters about icicles being candy and snow being sugar. Then he laughs, loud and sharp, until the officer turns and glares. Kurt clamps his mouth shut, but you can still hear the bubbling underneath. The landscape offers no relief. The horizon remains blank, the ground a blur of white and gray. Every step feels like retracing your own footprints. Someone mutters that the Soviets must be laughing in their trenches, warm in fur coats, bellies full of cabbage soup. You picture it, and for a moment the thought seems funny too. You nearly laugh aloud, but you bite your lip hard enough to taste blood. By midday, the column halts to dig in. The snow is too deep, the ground too hard. You hack at it anyway, shovel clanging against frozen earth. Around you, men start joking. One says he's digging his own grave early to save time. Another replies that at least the snow makes a soft pillow. The group laughs real laughter, booming, rolling. You join in despite yourself, shoulders shaking, breath wheezing. For a few seconds, it feels like release. But then you see Otto Aganer, what's left of him buried by snow near yesterday's halt, still smiling beneath a thin crust of ice. The laughter curdles in your throat. That evening, rations arrive late. A single tin of meat passed between 6 men. You take a frozen chunk, gnawing until your jaw aches. A soldier nearby pretends to toast with his piece, declaring, "To Moscow." The men howl with laughter, some choking as they swallow. You smile too, but it's bitter. You can't shake the thought that Moscow is as mythical as Atlantis, a city always promised but never reached. Historians later argue whether the Germans could have taken Moscow had they moved faster in autumn. Looking at the skeletal figures around you, you doubt it. Speed wouldn't have saved anyone from this winter. When night falls, the laughter returns in waves. A soldier giggles softly in his sleep. Another bursts out cackling as he relieves himself in the snow. Soon the camp sounds like a madhouse. You press your hands to your ears, but it seeps in anyway, slipping under your skin. You start trembling, not from cold, but from the fear that your own laugh will escape and never stop. You think of home-warm kitchens, steaming bread, your mother's scolding voice. The memory feels fragile, like glass about to shatter. And then, against your will, a chuckle slips from your lips. Quiet, quick, but real. You freeze, horrified. The sound echoes in your head, louder than it should. You bite your knuckles until they bleed, desperate to silence yourself around you. The laughter continues, rolling through the night like a storm. Some men collapse, mid-giggle, never rising again. Their faces freeze in smiles, teeth bared, eyes closed, as though they've died in the middle of a joke. The sight makes your stomach twist. You curl deeper into your pit, clutching your rifle, whispering over and over, "Don't laugh, don't laugh, don't laugh." But the snow doesn't care. The cold doesn't care. And somewhere, deep inside, you feel another laugh, waiting, patient, inevitable. The officers still try to impose order, though by now it feels more like theater than command. They bark at the column to keep pace, to hold formation, to act like soldiers. But soldiers don't giggle uncontrollably as they stumble through snow. Soldiers don't rip off their scarves while the air gnaws at their throats. Soldiers don't collapse with smiles frozen on their faces. And yet, here you are, part of an army that looks more like a traveling asylum. A medic trudges beside the column for part of the day, taking notes in a small, battered book. He squints at each man, scribbles, moves on. When one soldier bursts into laughter mid-march, he writes quickly, then shrugs when the man collapses a few steps later. You catch a glimpse of the page. Terminal delirium euphorian, inevitable. The words chill you more than the wind. Later, historians will pore over such notes and argue whether the German army understood hypothermia's mental collapse. To you, it's obvious they didn't, or worse, they did and decided it didn't matter. By afternoon, the officer's frustration boils over. One man, caught laughing loudly, is dragged forward and slapped across the face. Cowardice, the officer spits. Shame on you. The soldier only giggles harder, his teeth clacking together. The officer curses, shoves him back into line, and stomps away. The rest of you exchange uneasy glances. No one says it aloud, but you all know laughter isn't cowardice. It's a symptom, and it's spreading. The march halts near a line of ruined barns. You drop heavily into the snow, legs trembling. Around you, men peel off boots to inspect their feet. Some are swollen and gray, others blistered and cracked. One man taps his heel, and a chunk of blackened flesh breaks loose. He stares, then bursts into laughter, showing it to the others like a party trick. They laugh too, though you feel bile rise in your throat. Later, a pot of thin broth is passed around. You sip, the warm liquid burning your cracked lips, but it's barely enough to thaw your insides. A soldier across the fire raises his tin like a glass and declares, "To our health." The group roars with laughter. For a moment, you join in the absurdity too much to resist. But when the laughter doesn't stop, when it builds, echoing, ringing against the barn walls, you press your hands to your ears. It feels less like camaraderie and more like surrender, disguised as joy. That night, you lie awake listening. The laughter doesn't fade. It drifts from pit to pit, tent to tent, a patchwork of chuckles and giggles that merge into a chorus. Some men sound merry, others deranged. A few laugh in their sleep, bursts of sound like hiccups. The noise unnerves you more than silence ever could. Silence means men are conserving strength. Laughter means they're slipping, one by one, over the edge. You think of Ernst Otto, Kurtal, the ones who laughed too much, too long, and never woke again. You wonder if officers even bother writing their names down anymore, or if they're just listed as missing. You wonder how many frozen smiles lie buried under drifts along the road to Moscow. Historians still argue whether the laughter was a quirk of German soldiers, unprepared for Russian winters, or a universal human response to hypothermia. Maybe Russian soldiers laughed too. Maybe Napoleon's men did. Maybe this land has always rung with hysterics before swallowing armies whole. You imagine the snow itself, remembering every chuckle, storing it, releasing echoes whenever another invader arrives. By dawn, exhaustion drags you into a shallow sleep. In your dreams, you're home, sitting by a fire. Friends laugh at a joke you can't quite hear. You join in, the warmth real, the sound comforting. Then the dream shifts. The laughter grows louder, sharper, until it becomes the same eerie giggling you hear at night in the trenches. You wake with a start, heart pounding, lips parted in a half smile you didn't mean to make. You cover your face with your hands, ashamed, afraid. The laughter is inside you now. You can feel it, coiled, waiting. And you know that when it finally bursts free, there may be no stopping it. The march begins again, though no one could truly call it marching anymore. It's a stagger, a stumble, a dragging of boots through drifts that rise to the knees. Rifles droop at odd angles, helmets hang loose, and coats flap open on men, too delirious to keep them closed. From above, you imagine the column must look like a line of scarecrows trudging across a white desert. You keep your eyes on the back of the man ahead of you just to stay upright. His shoulders sway, his legs tremble, and every few steps he mutters something you can't hear. Then, suddenly, he starts chuckling. The sound is soft at first, like water bubbling in a pot, but quickly it grows into a sharp laugh. He doubles over, shoulders shaking. The officer barks, "Keep moving." But the man collapses into the snow, still grinning. Within moments, He stops moving altogether. His frozen smile stares up at the pale sky. No one bothers to lift him this time. The officer only waves the column forward. You step past the body, boots crunching over the snow, trying not to look. But you do look, and you know you'll remember that smile longer than you'll remember any battle by midday. The laughter becomes impossible to ignore. It pops up everywhere, scattered chuckles, giggles, sudden bursts of hysterics. Men laugh when they trip, when they cough, even when they curse. One soldier pulls off his mitten, holds up his swollen purple hand, and laughs as though it's the punchline to a grand joke. The sound is contagious. Soon, the men around him are laughing too, eyes wild, teeth chattering between giggles. You feel it tugging at your own chest like an infection. That night, you sit near a fire that's more smoke than flame. The rations are pitiful, a scrap of bread, a spoonful of watery stew. The men treat it like a banquet. One raises his tin and announces to victory in Moscow. The others howl with laughter, some banging their tins on the ground like drunkards in a tavern. You try to smile, but the sound chills you. It isn't joy. It's surrender dressed as celebration. The officers pretend not to hear. They huddle apart, voices low, faces pinched. You wonder what words they use in their reports. Low morale, unstable behavior. You doubt they ever write the truth that men are losing their minds, laughing themselves into graves. Later, historians will argue over how much the high command knew, whether they ignored it or simply chose to sacrifice men to the snow. But you, here and now, see the truth clearly. The laughter is as lethal as any bullet. As the fire sputters, a soldier named Weber starts telling a story about his childhood. Something about chasing pigs in a muddy yard, slipping, falling face first, and coming up with a mouthful of straw. He chuckles as he speaks, and soon others join in, roaring with mirth at the image. You can't help but to laugh too, just for a second. The sound feels almost good, like stretching cramped muscles. But then you catch sight of Weber's face. His eyes are glazed, unfocused. He isn't laughing at the story, he's laughing because his mind is already gone. Later, when the fire dies, you crawl into your pit. Sleep doesn't come. The night is filled with strange noises, giggles, coughs, mutters. It sounds like a mad carnival spread across the snow. You press your hands over your ears, whispering to yourself, "Don't laugh, don't laugh." But the whispers don't drown it out. Sometime in the dark, you feel it again, the urge bubbling inside, unprovoked, unstoppable. Your lips twitch, your chest tightens, and a chuckle escapes before you can swallow it. It's small, barely audible, but it terrifies you, because you know what follows. First, a chuckle, then more, then hysteria, then collapse. You curl tighter, burying your face in your arms, shaking silently. You tell yourself you're stronger, that you'll hold out, that you won't give in. But deep down, you know the laughter is waiting. It's patient. It always wins. Dawn is not a blessing. It arrives pale and indifferent, washing the snow in gray light that reveals just how many shapes lie motionless along the column's path. Some are curled in pits, others sprawled with arms outstretched, a few still grinning faintly beneath a layer of frost. The living step past them without comment. There is no ceremony here, only survival measured step by step. You rise stiffly, joints locking, breath coming in shallow bursts. Your rifle strap cuts into your shoulder, frozen stiff. Every movement hurts, but pain is good. Pain means you are still alive. The ones who stop feeling are the ones who laugh and collapse. You repeat this like a mantra as you fall back into line. Pain is good. laughter is death. The march resumes. The rhythm is automatic now. Lift, drag, crunch. The horizon remains blank. The road invisible beneath drifts. A man ahead begins humming a tune, soft, slow, almost sweet. At first it comforts you, something human to cling to, but soon others join, chuckling between notes, turning it into a grotesque parody of a song. Within minutes, the line of soldiers sounds like a drunken choir. Their voices rise, shrill, giggling through the melody until it collapses into raw laughter. You bite your tongue hard enough to draw blood. The metallic taste grounds you. You focus on it, clinging to the sting, to anything that isn't contagious laughter. By midday, exhaustion overwhelms the group. The officers call a halt near a copse of frozen trees. You slump against a trunk, limbs heavy. A soldier beside you, Carl, a man who once spoke endlessly about his wife, pulls off his boot. His toes are black, hard as stone. He grins, wiggling them like a puppet show. Look, he jokes, dancing sausages. The men around him erupt, slapping their knees, howling. Even Carl laughs so hard, he topples sideways, boot still dangling from his foot. You watch in horror as he lies there, still giggling, chest barely rising. Minutes later, the laughter fades, but so does his breath. His face freezes in a wide smile. The officers huddle together, their voices sharp, debating whether to press on or dig in. Historians still argue whether the German command should have retreated from Moscow's outskirts in 1941, sparing thousands of lives. Instead, orders then and now remain contradictory. Push forward, hold the line, dig trenches, advance tomorrow. To you, it's all the same. Every order ends with the same destination, deeper into the cold. That night, as you curl in your pit, you hear it again, the sound that haunts you now more than gunfire. Laughter drifting across the camp, rising, falling, carried on the wind like some eerie choir. Some of it is sharp, hysterical, some soft, almost tender. But none of it is sane. You pull your scarf tighter, press your rifle to your chest, and shut your eyes. You tell yourself again, don't laugh, don't give in. But the longer you lie there, the more your lips twitch, the more you feel that strange, treacherous warmth, and you wonder, with dread, if tomorrow you'll be the one throwing off your coat, grinning as the snow claims you. The march presses onward, though by now it feels less like an advance and more like a slow dissolving of men into the snow. The road to Moscow is no longer a line of triumph, but a graveyard in motion. You can see it in every face, sunken cheeks, cracked lips, eyes that stare without focus. The laughter from last night still echoes in your ears. Even now, you hear it bubbling occasionally from the ranks. Sudden bursts that don't match the misery around you. You pass the remains of a village, burned timbers jutting from snow like blackened bones. The air smells faintly of smoke, though the fire must have gone out weeks ago. A dog darts across the road, ribs sticking out, fur matted. It vanishes as quickly as it appeared, leaving only paw prints behind. Someone mutters they should have caught it for meat. Another chuckles and says, better soldier than supper. The group erupts in uneasy laughter, a reminder of how close hunger and madness walk hand in hand. The officers grow harsher. They bark orders with red faces, stamping boots, desperate to remind everyone there's still an army here, not just a mob of frozen men. But their voices carry less weight than the wind. No one really listens. The real commander is the cold, and it has been issuing its orders clearly. Shiver, stumble, laugh, collapse. By midday, the laughter spreads again. A patrol of men digging shallow foxholes suddenly bursts into giggles. One of them throws a handful of snow at another's face, and soon they're pelting each other like schoolboys, shrieking with amusement. The sight is bizarre, even charming for a heartbeat, until one of them collapses mid-throw, still chuckling as he falls flat. The others freeze, their laughter choking in their throats. Then, silence. Just another body in the snow. You can't shake the sense that the Eastern Front itself is laughing at you. Here you are, part of the most feared army in the world, undone not by Soviet bullets, but by a climate that has destroyed invaders for centuries. Napoleon's men marched this way too, and many of them must have laughed in delirium before freezing. History repeats, only the uniforms change. Historians still debate whether Hitler's hubris or logistical failure doomed the Moscow campaign. For you, there's no debate. It was the snow all along. That evening, the campfire circle feels surreal. Men huddle close, steam rising from damp coats. Someone pulls out a harmonica and plays a jaunty tune, the kind you'd expect in a beer hall. A few soldiers start singing along, voices cracked but enthusiastic. The music is off-key, ragged, but it carries a strange beauty against the endless silence. Then, as the tune builds, the men burst into laughter, high, wild, unstoppable. They laugh until tears freeze on their cheeks, until their sides shake, until one of them coughs up blood. You don't join this time. You sit back, watching, gripping your rifle like a lifeline. You can feel the laugh trying to claw its way out of your chest, but you choke it down. You've seen too many men fall after the laughter. You know what it means now. It isn't joy or defiance or even camaraderie. It's surrender. As night deepens, you crawl into your pit. The snow piles high around you, muffling every sound except the occasional giggle carried on the wind. You pull your scarf tighter, eyes squeezed shut. You tell yourself to hold on, to outlast the laughter, to see another dawn. But inside, you can feel something shifting. The cold is winning. The heaviness in your limbs grows. And somewhere in the back of your throat, a chuckle lurks, waiting for the moment when your guard finally slips. You wake to the sound of boots stomping snow and a few faint giggles drifting across the camp. At first, you think it's a dream. Laughter feels so out of place here, but when you open your eyes, you see two men sitting upright, shoulders shaking as they chuckle at nothing. Their faces are pale, lips cracked, teeth blackened by frost. Yet their laughter is bright and strange, as if they've stumbled into a tavern instead of a frozen trench. You sit up slowly, joints creaking, breath puffing white. Your body feels heavier every day, but your mind is starting to float. Thoughts slip like fish from your grasp. You wonder if that's how the laughter begins, not with jokes, but with drifting thoughts that forget how to stay anchored. That the column gathers again. Marching resumes, though calling it marching feels generous. It's more like stumbling in unison. Some men hold themselves stiff, others sway side to side like drunkards. More helmets are gone, more jackets flung open. It looks less like an army and more like a carnival parade gone terribly wrong. Kurt, with his ruined hands, shuffles beside you. He grins, suddenly whispers, "I've solved it." You ask what he means, but he only chuckles. His eyes are bright with fever or madness, or both. He mutters about icicles being candy and snow being sugar. Then he laughs, loud and sharp, until the officer turns and glares. Kurt clamps his mouth shut, but you can still hear the bubbling underneath. The landscape offers no relief. The horizon remains blank, the ground a blur of white and gray. Every step feels like retracing your own footprints. Someone mutters that the Soviets must be laughing in their trenches, warm in fur coats, bellies full of cabbage soup. You picture it, and for a moment the thought seems funny too. You nearly laugh aloud, but you bite your lip hard enough to taste blood. By midday, the column halts to dig in. The snow is too deep, the ground too hard. You hack at it anyway, shovel clanging against frozen earth. Around you, men start joking. One says he's digging his own grave early to save time. Another replies that at least the snow makes a soft pillow. The group laughs real laughter, booming, rolling. You join in despite yourself, shoulders shaking, breath wheezing. For a few seconds, it feels like release. But then you see Otto Aganer, what's left of him buried by snow near yesterday's halt, still smiling beneath a thin crust of ice. The laughter curdles in your throat. That evening, rations arrive late. A single tin of meat passed between 6 men. You take a frozen chunk, gnawing until your jaw aches. A soldier nearby pretends to toast with his piece, declaring, "To Moscow." The men howl with laughter, some choking as they swallow. You smile too, but it's bitter. You can't shake the thought that Moscow is as mythical as Atlantis, a city always promised but never reached. Historians later argue whether the Germans could have taken Moscow had they moved faster in autumn. Looking at the skeletal figures around you, you doubt it. Speed wouldn't have saved anyone from this winter. When night falls, the laughter returns in waves. A soldier giggles softly in his sleep. Another bursts out cackling as he relieves himself in the snow. Soon the camp sounds like a madhouse. You press your hands to your ears, but it seeps in anyway, slipping under your skin. You start trembling, not from cold, but from the fear that your own laugh will escape and never stop. You think of home-warm kitchens, steaming bread, your mother's scolding voice. The memory feels fragile, like glass about to shatter. And then, against your will, a chuckle slips from your lips. Quiet, quick, but real. You freeze, horrified. The sound echoes in your head, louder than it should. You bite your knuckles until they bleed, desperate to silence yourself around you. The laughter continues, rolling through the night like a storm. Some men collapse mid-giggle, never rising again. Their faces freeze in smiles, teeth bared, eyes closed, as though they've died in the middle of a joke. The sight makes your stomach twist. You curl deeper into your pit, clutching your rifle, whispering over and over, "Don't laugh, don't laugh, don't laugh." But the snow doesn't care. The cold doesn't care. And somewhere, deep inside, you feel another laugh, waiting, patient, inevitable. The officers still try to impose order, though by now it feels more like theater than command. They bark at the column to keep pace, to hold formation, to act like soldiers. But soldiers don't giggle uncontrollably as they stumble through snow. Soldiers don't rip off their scarves while the air gnaws at their throats. Soldiers don't collapse with smiles frozen on their faces. And yet, here you are, part of an army that looks more like a traveling asylum. A medic trudges beside the column for part of the day, taking notes in a small, battered book. He squints at each man, scribbles, moves on. When one soldier bursts into laughter mid-march, he writes quickly, then shrugs when the man collapses a few steps later. You catch a glimpse of the page. Terminal delirium euphorian, inevitable. The words chill you more than the wind. Later, historians will pore over such notes and argue whether the German army understood hypothermia's mental collapse. To you, it's obvious they didn't, or worse, they did and decided it didn't matter. By afternoon, the officer's frustration boils over. One man, caught laughing loudly, is dragged forward and slapped across the face. Cowardice, the officer spits. Shame on you. The soldier only giggles harder, his teeth clacking together. The officer curses, shoves him back into line, and stomps away. The rest of you exchange uneasy glances. No one says it aloud, but you all know laughter isn't cowardice. It's a symptom, and it's spreading. The march halts near a line of ruined barns. You drop heavily into the snow, legs trembling. Around you, men peel off boots to inspect their feet. Some are swollen and gray, others blistered and cracked. One man taps his heel, and a chunk of blackened flesh breaks loose. He stares, then bursts into laughter, showing it to the others like a party trick. They laugh too, though you feel bile rise in your throat. Later, a pot of thin broth is passed around. You sip, the warm liquid burning your cracked lips, but it's barely enough to thaw your insides. A soldier across the fire raises his tin like a glass and declares, "To our health." The group roars with laughter. For a moment, you join in the absurdity too much to resist. But when the laughter doesn't stop, when it builds, echoing, ringing against the barn walls, you press your hands to your ears. It feels less like camaraderie and more like surrender, disguised as joy. That night, you lie awake listening. The laughter doesn't fade. It drifts from pit to pit, tent to tent, a patchwork of chuckles and giggles that merge into a chorus. Some men sound merry, others deranged. A few laugh in their sleep, bursts of sound like hiccups. The noise unnerves you more than silence ever could. Silence means men are conserving strength. Laughter means they're slipping, one by one, over the edge. You think of Ernst Otto, Kurtal, the ones who laughed too much, too long, and never woke again. You wonder if officers even bother writing their names down anymore, or if they're just listed as missing. You wonder how many frozen smiles lie buried under drifts along the road to Moscow. Historians still argue whether the laughter was a quirk of German soldiers, unprepared for Russian winters, or a universal human response to hypothermia. Maybe Russian soldiers laughed too. Maybe Napoleon's men did. Maybe this land has always rung with hysterics before swallowing armies whole. You imagine the snow itself, remembering every chuckle, storing it, releasing echoes whenever another invader arrives. By dawn, exhaustion drags you into a shallow sleep. In your dreams, you're home, sitting by a fire. Friends laugh at a joke you can't quite hear. You join in, the warmth real, the sound comforting. Then the dream shifts. The laughter grows louder, sharper, until it becomes the same eerie giggling you hear at night in the trenches. You wake with a start, heart pounding, lips parted in a half smile you didn't mean to make. You cover your face with your hands, ashamed, afraid. The laughter is inside you now. You can feel it, coiled, waiting, and you know that when it finally bursts free, there may be no stopping it. The march begins again, though no one could truly call it marching anymore. It's a stagger, a stumble, a dragging of boots through drifts that rise to the knees. Rifles droop at odd angles, helmets hang loose, and coats flap open on men, too delirious to keep them closed. From above, you imagine the column must look like a line of scarecrows trudging across a white desert. You keep your eyes on the back of the man ahead of you just to stay upright. His shoulders sway, his legs tremble, and every few steps he mutters something you can't hear. Then, suddenly, he starts chuckling. The sound is soft at first, like water bubbling in a pot, but quickly it grows into a sharp laugh. He doubles over, shoulders shaking. The officer barks, "Keep moving." The officer mutters, "Weakling," and orders the column to move on. You glance back once more at Carl's frozen grin and shiver. It isn't weakness, you think. It's the snow's cruelest trick. That evening, the fire is barely aglow. Rations have dwindled to scraps, one sardine tin shared between 5 men, a few crumbs of bread. The officer passes his portion untouched, his jaw tight. You wonder if even he is beginning to unravel. Conversation circles the fire, low and weary. Someone mentions Stalingrad comrades trapped, starving, eating horseflesh, even boiling belts for soup. You hear the word glue and remember stories of Leningrad civilians boiling wallpaper paste to stay alive. The thought is grotesque, but here it feels almost normal. Survival twists all logic. Then, inevitably, laughter breaks the circle. A soldier points to the sardine tin and jokes. Better than a wedding feast, another adds. At least it doesn't argue with you. The group erupts again, wheezing and cackling, voices bouncing off the trees. You join for half a second before stopping yourself. It doesn't sound like men sharing a joke anymore. It sounds like hyenas around a carcass. The medic scribbles again in his notebook, face grim. He mutters something about collective hysteria, words you barely understand. What you do understand is that laughter has become the language of death here. The ones who laugh too hard don't wake up. Night falls quickly. You curl into your pit, pulling your coat tight. The stars glitter cruelly above, bright and uncaring. Around you, the laughter continues, soft at first, then swelling. Some men giggle in their sleep, others burst out with sudden cackles, echoing across the camp like fireworks. You cover your ears, but it seeps in anyway, a sound more terrifying than artillery. Hours pass. You don't sleep. Instead, you think about the paradox of it all. Men freezing to death while grinning, armies collapsing not in silence but in laughter. Historians will later argue whether this laughter was exaggerated, whether diaries embellished it for drama. But here, in the pit, you know better. You hear it. You feel it clawing inside your chest. At some point in the dark, you almost give in. The corners of your mouth twitch. A chuckle bubbles in your throat. You clamp your hands over your face, whispering to yourself, "Not yet, not yet." The snow presses closer, muffling the world. The fire has gone out. Only the laughter remains, drifting across the steppe. Endless and eerie dot. You close your eyes, clinging to pain, to memory, to anything that still feels real. Tomorrow, you tell yourself, just survive tomorrow. But deep down, you know the laughter is patient. It will wait. And when it comes, it will carry you into the snow, smiling all the way. You rise at dawn with the rest of the column, though rise is generous. It's more like being pulled upright by some invisible string. Your body doesn't want to move anymore. The cold has already stolen the will from your legs and the strength from your hands. What's left is habit, the drilled compulsion to follow the man in front, no matter where he leads. The officers shout, their voices hoarse. The men shuffle. Rifles drag in the snow. Helmets sit crooked. The army that once marched like a machine now looks like a funeral procession, except the mourners are laughing. Chuckles echo down the line, random and jarring. Some are high-pitched, hysterical, others soft and dreamy. You catch yourself listening for them the way you once listened for artillery, as though laughter itself is the new shellfire of this front. The march stretches across empty plains. The wind gnaws, the snow blinds, the cold suffocates. You count your steps again, trying to anchor yourself. 50, 100, 200. Each number is a victory. But then a man beside you slips, tumbles into a drift, and instead of groaning, he bursts into cackles. His laughter carries down the line, until half a dozen others join in, giggling as if the fall were a slapstick act. You grit your teeth, biting back the urge to laugh too. The sound claws at your chest, demanding release. By midday, the officers order a rest near a frozen river. You slump against the icy bank, breath shallow, fingers trembling. The men gather in small groups, muttering, some still chuckling at nothing at all. A soldier nearby pulls off his boots, waving them overhead like trophies. His bare feet are purple, grotesque, toes stiff as sticks. He howls with laughter, shouting, "Look, I'm barefoot for summer." The men around him roar. You can't look away. You want to scream, but the scream twists into a nervous laugh that you barely stifle. Historians will later debate the medical details of this, the so-called paradoxical undressing, the hysterical euphoria. Some argue it was rare, others that it was common. But standing here, watching man after man peel off his clothes in a storm, you know the truth. It is everywhere, a silent contagion passed through the ranks, and laughter is its soundtrack. The officers try to stop it. They strike men with rifle butts, force boots back on, button coats closed, but the effect doesn't last. The men giggle through the blows, eyes glazed, minds already gone. The officers look helpless now, their authority stripped as bare as the feet in the snow. You almost pity them. They command an army, but the real general here is winter, and its orders are final. Later, the column moves again. Your stomach growls, knowing itself. Rations have nearly vanished. Someone passes a tin of fat, scraped nearly clean. A soldier licks the inside with exaggerated gusto, making loud slurping noises. The others howl with laughter, falling over themselves in mirth. You laugh too, briefly, against your will. The absurdity is too much. Men dying in droves, laughing at scraps of food, as though they're at a feast by evening. You dig your pit once more. The ground feels harder, your arms weaker. You scrape only a shallow hollow before collapsing inside, too tired to continue. The fire nearby smokes more than it burns. Shadows flicker, distorted, across men's faces. They look like masks, smiling one second, grimacing the next. Conversation begins again, low at first, then rising. Someone starts recounting a story from Stalingrad comrades, eating horseflesh, chewing leather, even boiling soup from sawdust. He laughs bitterly at his own tale, and the laughter spreads. Soon the whole circle is cackling, some pounding the snow, others gasping for breath. You clutch your rifle, knuckles white, refusing to join. But the sound presses in, irresistible. Finally, a chuckle slips from your throat. You clamp your hands over your mouth, horrified. The others don't notice, they're too busy laughing themselves hoarse. The medic scribbles again in his notebook. You glimpse the words this time. Mass hysteria. He shakes his head, closes the book, and tucks it away, as though the act itself is pointless. Night falls. The stars are sharp, cruel diamonds. The cold is merciless. You lie curled in your shallow pit, breath shallow, whispering, "Don't laugh, don't laugh, don't laugh." But the whispers fade against the rising chorus around you. Giggles, chuckles, roars. Some men laugh themselves into silence, collapsing mid-guffaw. Their bodies freeze where they fall, smiles etched forever. You shut your eyes, trembling, knowing the truth you've been avoiding. You won't die in silence. You'll die laughing, just like them. And that, somehow, feels more terrifying than the cold itself. The morning brings no warmth, only more stillness. The column rises like ghosts, staggering from pits of snow, eyes hollow, limbs stiff. You can't tell who is alive by willpower and who is simply animated by momentum. The march resumes, each boot sinking into drifts that erase themselves moments later. As if the land refuses to record your passing, the laughter begins earlier today. A man just ahead slips on the ice and collapses. Instead of crying out, he chuckles. Not a bitter chuckle, not even hysterical, just light, casual, as if he's amused by his own clumsiness. Others pick it up. Soon half the line is giggling softly, like children being told a secret. You force your eyes downward, staring at the snow, trying not to hear. But it seeps in anyway, wrapping around you like smoke. By midday, you feel your body betraying you. The shivering has stopped. Your limbs are heavy, your breath shallow, but you no longer feel pain. Instead, there's a strange calm. You almost welcome it. You think, perhaps, this is the moment others spoke of, when the cold convinces you it's warm. The dangerous comfort before collapse. And then, to your horror, you feel a smile spreading across your face. You clamp your jaw, grind your teeth, fight the urge. But the laughter bubbles anyway, a soft sound slipping out before you can stop it. You hear yourself giggle. It's small, harmless even, but it terrifies you more than any artillery shell, because now you know the laughter has finally claimed you. The officers no longer even try. They march stiffly at the front, eyes straight ahead, ignoring the sounds behind them. They've stopped writing reports, stopped calling it cowardice. They know what you know. The army is dissolving, not through battle, but through madness. Historians will later argue about numbers, about whether thousands froze here, or tens of thousands. They'll analyze strategies, logistics, failures of leadership, but none of that will capture the chorus of laughter rising from men as they die. That night, you sit in your pit, too weak to dig it deeper. Snow drifts over your legs. Around you, the laughter is constant now. A background hum, eerie and relentless. Some men howl with mirth, others giggle softly. A few muttered jokes that make no sense. The sound weaves into the wind, until you can't tell where the men end and the night begins. You lean back, staring at the sky. Stars blaze above, bright and cruel, as indifferent as the snow beneath you. Your rifle lies across your lap, but you're too tired to hold it. You think of home-warm bread, firelight, voices of family long gone. The memory feels distant, almost unreal, as though it belongs to someone else. Another laugh escapes you, louder this time. You cover your mouth, but it's too late. Your chest shakes, your breath wheezes. The absurdity overwhelms you, that after all the marches, the battles, the promises of victory, you'll end not with glory, but with giggles. You laugh harder, tears freezing on your cheeks. The men around you join in, their voices mingling with yours. A mad chorus rising into the frozen night. The world softens. The snow no longer feels sharp. The cold feels distant. Even your hunger fades. You are laughing still, shaking, smiling. As your body grows heavy, your eyes flutter closed. The sound continues, echoing, until everything dissolves into white dot. And here the story should end with a grin, with a laugh, with snow covering every trace. But let's step gently back, now. Breathe slower. Imagine the snow not as an enemy, but as a blanket settling quietly across the land. The echoes of laughter fade into silence, carried away by the wind, leaving only stillness. You no longer see soldiers stumbling through drifts. You see a wide, open plain, smooth and untouched, stretching into the horizon. The cold that once cut like a knife now softens into quiet air. Each exhale feels slower, gentler, as if the night itself is encouraging you to rest. The sky, dotted with stars, doesn't seem cruel anymore, it seems calm. A vast ceiling watching over everything. Think of a fire, not the thin, smoky flames of a soldier's camp, but a steady hearth at home. Imagine the warmth on your hands, the glow on your face, the crackle of wood turning to embers. That warmth is yours now, safe and unthreatened. And instead of laughter breaking men apart, imagine softer sounds, the hush of wind through trees, the faint trickle of water under ice, the quiet breathing of someone safe in bed. Those are the sounds you can hold on to. Let your shoulders loosen. Let your breath even out. The story has run its course, and all that's left now is stillness, comfort, and rest. Whatever battles were fought in that frozen land, they are long over. History closes its pages, the snow covers the fields, and the laughter fades to silence. You are here, in the quiet, safe. The night is calm, and sleep can take you gently, without fear.